Hello and welcome to the Less podcast. I am Frank Helmstetter, your host, ? Anyways, I wanted to do this little introduction to the podcast that I just recorded to let you know that I am recording this really early in the morning in a car on my iPhone. And so if you hear a little bit of shuffling or anything like that, which I think does happen around the 6th or 7th minute, I do apologize, but I promise it will get better, and I will focus in more on the quality of the content. It should not be too bad, though, and you should be able to hear me just fine. So I appreciate that you're listening, and I hope that you enjoy episode 1 of the Less podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, whatever time it may be if you're listening. I appreciate it. This is the Less podcast, where we discuss minimalism, sustainability, and the process. My name is Frank Helmstetter, and I am a student at Seattle Pacific University, currently enrolled there in my second year. And I have recently developed sort of this appreciation and passion for minimalism and a sustainable world, both in housing and environmental impacts that we leave. So this podcast, to give you an idea, is going to be basically just talking about different questions that surround these topics, different topics themselves, really just anything that I feel can qualify under this idea of minimalism or sustainability. It could be something that I've seen myself struggling with or others struggling with. It could be rants about consumerism, whatever it may be. That is the idea behind this podcast. And I also want to let it be known that I am not by any long shot, I am not perfect. I find myself in certain aspects, whether it be little things, being tempted to be very materialistic. I also find myself forgetting to bring reusable cups and things like that. While this is kind of a silly example, it's real. And sometimes, I will use plastic cups and things like that. And I just think about, sort of my mentality towards those things and how that one decision that I made out of pretty much just laziness on my own part was a mistake. So I just wanted to preface and say that, I don't want this podcast to sound pretentious in any way. We're all in it together, and I just think that it's better if we discuss these things sort of out in the open, what's really happening in this world with Western culture and our dire need to surround ourselves with pointless things, and also what is happening to our earth. How can we solve this housing crisis as we populate past the carrying capacity of the world, and what else, and whatever may fall under those categories. So that's basically an outline for this podcast today. I want to start by, first of all, thanking you for listening. So first, I want to talk about how minimalism hasn't lightened my emotional burdens. So the title of today's episode is How Minimalism Has Lightened My Emotional Baggage and Burdens. So I wanted to start by start this story by talking about a book that you're probably all familiar with. It's super almost niche now. It's Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. I saw this book at a local Seattle bookstore, and I was super intrigued. I had never actually heard of her before, and her work in sort of the minimalism field. And so I was really intrigued by this book. I'd always been into sort of being organizational, and I had recently embarked in this effort to downsize my things that I owned. And so this was, maybe 2 months ago. And so I went ahead on Amazon, I'm ashamed to say, got it for a little bit cheaper, financial minimalism, going to find those ways to save money. So I ordered it on Amazon. About 2 days later it comes, and I find myself reading this book and finishing it within maybe a day and a half to 2 days. And what I read was not only because it was an easy read, but also because the material was super intriguing and interesting. And the way that she aligns how we need to find things in our life that spark joy in our hearts and nothing else. So the theory basically is that nothing that we own should not spark joy for us, so to speak. So she's very sort of spiritual about holding specific items that you own and really making sure that they do something for you still. Because I think a lot of times we don't even know that we own something. We'll go and we'll touch it or we'll look at it and we'll be like, why do I have this? That's an immediate sign that you need to get rid of that thing. It has served its purpose in your life. She even goes as far as to say that we should be thanking the items for all that they have done for us, which can seem a little silly, especially in Western culture. But as a Japanese woman from a certain culture, she finds herself really engaging the items in more of a spiritual sense, which I think is kind of cool and can be appreciated. So that's the basic premise of the book. And so I found myself reading this book, and I had already thought about, minimalism in whatever sense I may have thought it was before, but I couldn't really figure out my definition of minimalism. And so I think Marie Kondo's method really did it for me, and I think that it was really a good way to look at it. And the idea that it's not really about how much you own. You don't need to have 3 shirts and 3 pairs of pants to be a minimalist. Minimalism is simply only owning things that you use or things that give you joy, genuine joy in your life. And that's a true meaning of minimalism in my eyes. Now, there are obviously other approaches to this, but the gist of it all is that I had such a rough winter quarter up here in Seattle with my academic quarter. I found myself really sulking in the fact that we had so much snow this year, and that we had, obviously rainy Seattle days. And so I was super, super down. I had, emotional baggage. I just have anxiety in general. And so it was hard for me to deal with these things on top of wanting to be organized. And I knew that there was something to the fact that I wanted to embark on this. I knew that there was a reason behind it, and I believed genuinely that it would help me in the long run, that it would help me see things for what they were, to have an inventory on what I own and what is in my life. And so I made the decision to really just go at it and follow these methods that Marie Kondo lined out in her book, which I would highly recommend. Again, it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. She also has a Netflix show, which I didn't know. And everyone said, "Oh, is that book from the lady on Netflix?" And I said, "What book from the lady on Netflix?" And they said, "That book that you're holding in your hand." And I said, "There's a show on Netflix?" And they said, "Yes, there's a show on Netflix." And I said, well, I just bought the book. But it's okay, I like to read, and it was probably good for me. And yes, I have watched the show now, so in case you were wondering. Anyways, we're just going to get back to it. So anyways, we were talking about emotional baggage. Yes, so I knew that there was something about this method, so I went at it, and I started cleaning and tidying up my life, holding each item in my hand and seeing if it sparked joy for me. Now, as a student, if you are a student listening to this, one of my fellow students maybe at Seattle Pacific, it is obviously hard to get rid of certain things because you need them for school, and they might not spark joy for you. They might not, because they are textbooks, but you still need them. So there are obviously exceptions to this theory, guys, and no one's perfect. I still own things that are practical, that are super practical in my life, that I may feel frustrated to own because I feel like I might not use them. but they are super practical, like emergency packages and things like that, like batteries for flashlights. But keeping those super organized definitely helped as well. So the main gist of this is that I ended up cleaning, and I got rid of so many articles of clothing. I think it was about 3 trash bags worth, and that was super life-changing. I really felt this weight lift up off of me. I also got rid of a lot of material things. I also would like to admit that I had a time in my life where I found myself taking little things, and some people may call it stealing, but for legal purposes, I will say taking little things. And they were little things, and I found myself still owning these things. And, I have not taken anything for many years, but I still own these things. And I knew in my heart that no matter how many I got rid of, it wouldn't truly be gone out of my life and my mistakes past me until I got rid of every single thing that I had. And so there were a few of them, and I decided, I need to get rid of all of these. I had wanted to keep one for so long, and I had progressively gotten rid of more and more, right? But I still was holding on to these 1 or 2 little things that I had taken, and I got rid of all of them. And I can tell you, as a Christian man, just for point's sake, I had felt forgiven, regardless of owning these things, but it truly didn't feel like I was lifted of this burden in my heart until I actually got rid of each one. And it was really hard because I didn't want to. But I can tell you that I haven't thought about it. It hasn't weighed on my heart at all. I haven't once needed this thing at all since I've gotten rid of it. And if I do, I'll pay for another one. So that was super powerful for me. So that on top of, many other things, I had gotten rid of so many things, and it had really lightened up my room. It made me feel just literally lighter. And I know it sounds stupid, it really does, but if someone said this to me, someone said, yeah, I just felt so much lighter because, I got rid of so many things in my room, and my room just felt like it was airy, and the air was cleaner and things like that. I would probably be like, dude, you don't know, you're tripping out. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But seriously, it's true. It really did it makes my room just feel cleaner. I feel more at ease. And on top of that, Marie Kondo really stresses this point of how you organize your things to be able to see at first-hand glance into a drawer or cabinet what you own, so you can take inventory on your life. And this impacts even our financial minimalism, because if you think about it in a sense of, hey, I need AA batteries. You have AA batteries, but they're stored so deep into this bin of something that you don't know that you own AA batteries. So guess what? You go and buy a big pack of AA batteries, only to find out later on that you already had AA batteries. You could have saved yourself money, bought yourself a cup of coffee, probably 2 cups of coffee at that point, or saved that money for something that you really want, something that you really need, pay rent with it, things like that. It really depends on what we need to use our money for, if we're even able to use it for leisure, or if we really need to use it practically. And so saving time and money by just aligning our things so that we can see each item that we own. That also allows us to see clothes that we don't ever wear. So if we can see each thing that we own, and we find ourselves, and I'm like, wow, I really haven't even worn this shirt. Like, someone else could totally be using it. And by the way, no, that's like part of the greatest feeling of this process is getting rid of things, but also I would recommend obviously donating them. Please don't throw your clothes away. But donating them secondhand, and knowing, especially in like a city that experiences homelessness like Seattle, or really any urban area or anywhere, doesn't matter where it is, the fact that these people are going to own this item and maybe love it for another amount of years, and it will spark joy for them, but it has served its purpose in my life. I don't need this shirt anymore. I don't need these pants anymore. I don't wear them. It's time. It's a call to action here, guys. It's time to think about what you own and forget the excuse of, oh, but I might wear it one day. There are people out there who could really use these things. And so not only is it unfair to this shirt that wants to be worn, as Marie Kondo would say, sees a shirt as a person, she would say, this shirt wants to be worn. It's its job to be worn. So let it do its job. But if you're not going to wear it, you need to give it to someone else. But even if you don't believe in shirts wanting things, you should believe in the fact that people need things and that people are struggling. So if you have something that you have had for years and you just say, oh, maybe one day I'll need it, I'm here to tell you that you probably won't need that thing. And so, yeah. But basically, when you can see everything that you own, it allows you to be able to, A, save money and save time finding it. Yes, so that's sort of the main process that I've gone through. And to tie this in, emotionally, like I said, I was very frustrated, and I had a long quarter, and it felt dragged out, and I just felt done. By the end of the quarter, I was just done with my classes. I couldn't think about public speaking anymore. I couldn't think about things that I really, to be honest, didn't really care about. I had another class I cared about, but that class was my hardest class. And so I was really just done, and I couldn't do it anymore. And this process of just purging myself of everything that I didn't need, I just don't need these things, literally made my emotions in my head feel looser and not as tightly wound. I just felt relaxed. And I felt great knowing what I own. I felt great knowing that I could pack up and leave if I had to in a much shorter amount of time than I could before. And I just felt good knowing where everything was. Everything has a place. Life, especially in the workforce and in college, whatever it is you may be doing, is super stressful, and it can get really stressful. So the last thing that you want to do is give yourself more reasons to be stressed. There's no reason that you can't do this too. And I'm telling you this not to sound pretentious, like I said. I'm telling you this because I am sharing this as a testimony to say that it really did work for me. And while I can't promise that it's going to work for every single person, I really would recommend that you do this and you follow this process and pick up this book. It is worth your money, or you can find it at a library, borrow it from a friend, or if you're not much that into reading, you could watch the Netflix show, which I didn't know about before I read the damn book. But whatever it is, however you may obtain the information that Marie Kondo lines out, I would highly recommend this. And this is basically just the process that I took, what kind of lightened my emotional burdens, lightened my life, allowed me to really see what I own, feel lighter, and just kind of, it has allowed me to be more productive too. And I mean this in the most genuine sense. I have been more productive. I have found myself being more creatively spontaneous and things like that. I really have. And so this book and this method and this idea of minimalism and only keeping what sparks joy for you has truly set me up for a path of success and a path of a better life, and just one that feels more me, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but I just feel less stressed. I really do. I feel more at home in the place that I live. And the best part is, guys, is that you get to the point where everything that you own has a purpose or gives you joy. And I think that that's super special. To have every piece of clothing, to have every item in your life mean something to you or give you joy, preferably both. But imagine that. Imagine having everything that you own serve a purpose or give you joy. That would be super cool. And I know for a fact that most people don't live like this, especially in Western culture. We find ourselves piling up with materials, extra boxes. I bet you know what? I bet you any money, because this was me up until about 2 months ago. I bet you any money, any one of you that owns an iPhone still has the box just sitting in a drawer thinking, oh, maybe I'll resell it and I'll get an extra $5 or $10 if I keep the box. First of all, I know what you're going to do if you sell that phone. You're going to trade it in. They don't care about the box. You're going to get lazy and you're going to trade it in. I know you. I know you listening. You're going to get lazy. That's always how we sell phones. I have never once listed a phone on eBay. If you have, props to you, but get that thing out of your life. You don't need that phone box. You can repurpose it. You can put things in it. You can put rings in it, whatever you may want to do. But if you're just keeping that box, there's no point in having that box. I promise you that it's not going to make a difference. If it does, and you find yourself selling a phone, and the person buying it says, hey, where's the box? I would have bought it for $5 or $10 more if you would have kept the box. I will, you know what? Give me your Venmo. I will personally Venmo you $5 to $10, depending on how I feel. If that person that buys it from you says, hey, yeah, I would have bought it for more if there was the box. Because I am confident that won't happen. That's just a small example. But these things, imagine not having these things that you just don't need, guys. At the end of the day, you don't need them. They don't serve a purpose in your life anymore. You can thank them if you feel so inclined. Thank them for serving the purpose in your life, and either donate them or throw them away. So I just want to call you to do these things. This, again, I don't want to sound pretentious. I'm not perfect. I still have things that I wish I could get rid of that I need, that they're practical. And I always find myself wanting to own less and less. And that's the mentality behind the Less podcast, to talk about things about minimalism, sustainability, and the process. Thank you guys for listening. And I hope that you learned something, that you can maybe go back to your humble abode and find yourself lessening, reading a book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, or watching her Netflix show. See you next week.